You love Norse mythology? You can't wait to dive into the realm of the mighty gods of Asgard? Good. Then listen to the amazing story of how Thor the Thunderer and Loki the trickster used a clever plan to enter Jotunheim in disguise to fool Thrym the Giant, who had fallen in love with Freya the Beautiful. I'm Hannah, and I'm going to read to you how Thor and Loki fooled Thrym the Giant. Once again, this is an awesome story from Norse mythology, which tells us of the daring journey that Thor and Loki take into Jotunheim, the dwelling of the frost giants, disguised as beautiful maidens in an attempt to retrieve Mjolnir, Thor's mighty hammer and protector of Asgard. Will their plan pay off, or will they eventually be exposed? Listen to the story. How Thor and Loki fooled Thrym the Giant. This is a story about Thor and Loki, and it involves Thrym, a somewhat simple giant who had cunning streaks in him. Loki and Thor had been in this giant's house. He had made a feast for them, and Thor had been unwatchful. One day when they were far from Jotunheim, Thor missed Mjolnir, the powerful lightning hammer that was the protector of the gods. He couldn't remember how or where he had mislaid it, and because he lost his hammer that he had sworn never to let out of his sight, he panicked and he didn't know what to do. So Loki's thoughts went towards Thrym, that somewhat simple giant who had yet cunning streaks in him. Loki thought it would be worthwhile to see if Thrym knew anything about it, and decided first to go to Asgard. He hurried across the rainbow bridge Bifrost and passed Heimdall without speaking to him. To none of the dwellers in Asgard whom he met did he dare relate the tidings of Thor's loss. He spoke to none until he came to Freya's palace. To Freya he said, "You must lend me your falcon dress so that I can fly to Thrym's dwelling and find out if he knows where Mjolnir is." "Even if every feather was silver, I would give it to you to go on such an errand," said Freya to him. So Loki put on the falcon dress, and he flew to Jotunheim, where he came near Thrym's dwelling. He found the giant upon a hillside, putting golden and silver collars upon the necks of his hounds. Loki, in the plumage of a falcon, perched on the rock above him, watching the giant with falcon eyes. And while he was there, he heard the giant speak boastful words. "I put collars of silver and gold on you now, my hounds," said he. "But soon we giants will have the gold of Asgard to deck our hounds and our steeds. Yes, even Freya's necklace Brisinga man to put upon you, the best of my hounds. For Mjolnir, the defense of Asgard, is in Thrym's holding." Then Loki spoke to him. "We know that Mjolnir is in your possession, O Thrym," said he. "But don't you know that the eyes of the watchful gods are upon you?" "Ha, Loki shapeshifter," said Thrym. "You're there, but all your watching will not help you find Mjolnir. I've buried Thor's hammer 8 miles deep in the earth. Find it if you can. It is below the caves of the dwarfs." "It is useless then for us to search for Thor's hammer, eh, Thrym?" said Loki. "It is useless for you to search for it," said the giant. "But imagine what a compensation you would gain if you restored Thor's hammer to the dwellers in Asgard, said Loki. No, cunning Loki. I'll never restore it, not for any compensation, said Thrym. But just think about it, Thrym, said Loki. Is there nothing in Asgard you would like to own? No treasure? No possession? Odin's ring Draupnir, perhaps, or Frey's ship Skidbladnir? No, said Thrym. Only one thing could the dwellers in Asgard offer me that I would take in exchange for Mjolnir. And what would that be, Thrym? Said Loki, flying towards him. She whom many giants have striven to gain. I want Freya for my wife, said Thrym. Loki watched Thrym for a long time with his falcon eyes. He saw that the giant would not alter his demand. I will tell the dwellers in Asgard of your demand, he said at last, and flew away. Loki knew that the dwellers in Asgard would never let Freya be taken from them to become the wife of Thrym. By this time, all the dwellers in Asgard had heard of the loss of Mjolnir, the protector of the gods. When Loki crossed the rainbow bridge, Heimdall shouted to him to ask what tidings he brought back. But Loki didn't stop to speak to the warden of the bridge. Instead, he went straight to the hall where the gods sat in council, and Heimdall followed him. To the Aesir and the Vanir, Loki told Thrym's demand, and then turning to Freya, he said, Bind thyself, Freya, with bridal linen. We two shall go yonder to Jotunheim. And, as legend tells us, wrathful was Freya, and fiercely she snorted, and the dwelling great of the gods was shaken, and flung was the beautiful Brisinga necklace. She fumed, and she said, Most lustful indeed should I look to all, if I journeyed with thee to the giant's home. Nor would the other Aesir and Vanir agree to let beautiful Freya go live in Jotunheim as the wife of Thrym the Giant. But what to do? All in the council were cast down. The gods would never again be able to help mortal men, for now that Mjolnir was in the giant's hands, all their strength would have to be used in the defense of Asgard. So they sat in the council with looks downcast. But smart Heimdall, who knew the future well, said, I have thought of a trick that may win back the hammer from Thrym. Let us pretend to send Freya to Jotunheim as a bride to him. But let one of the gods go in Freya's veil and dress. Which of the gods would bring himself to do so shameful a thing? Said those in the council. Oh, of course he who lost the hammer, Thor. Who else should be prepared to do as much to win it back? Said Loki, with a grin. Indeed, said Heimdall, for Thor's great strength makes him perfectly suitable to wield his hammer once he gets it back. Thor! Thor win back the hammer from Thrym by Heimdall's trick, said the Aesir and the Vanir, and they left it to Loki to arrange how Thor should go to Jotunheim as a bride for Thrym. Loki left the council of the gods and came to where he had left Thor. There is but one way to win the hammer back, Thor, he said, and the gods in the council have decreed that you shall take it. What is the way? Said Thor. No matter what it is, tell me, and I shall do as you say. Then, said Loki, laughing, I am to take you to Jotunheim as a bride to Thrym. You will go in bridal dress and veil, in Freya's bridal dress and veil, and you will wear her Brisinga necklace. What? I'll have to dress in a woman's garb? Shouted Thor. Oh, yes, Thor. And you'll wear a veil over your head and a garland of flowers upon it. I'm going to wear a garland of flowers? And rings upon your fingers and bracelets of red gold around your arms. And a bunch of housekeeper's keys in your girdle. Oh, and I almost forgot to mention the 2 round stones you'll wear on your chest beneath your dress. Are you out of your mind? Stop your mockery, Loki, said Thor roughly, or I'm going to shake you. Sorry, Thor, this is no mockery. You will have to do this if you want to win Mjolnir back for the defense of Asgard. Thrym will take no other compensation than Freya. I would trick him by bringing you to him in Freya's veil and dress, and when your mighty hammer is in your holding again, you can deal with him and with all in his hall. But don't worry, I shall be with you as your bridesmaid. Oh, sweet, sweet maiden Thor. Loki, said Thor, you devised all this just to mock me. I in a bridal dress, I with a bride's veil upon me, the dwellers in Asgard will never cease to laugh at me. Oh, thank Heimdall for this idea that will make you look ridiculous, said Loki. But there will never be laughter again in Asgard unless you're able to bring back the hammer that your own unwatchfulness has lost in the first place. True, said Thor unhappily. And you really think, Loki, this is the only way to bring back Mjolnir from the giants? It is the only way, Thor, said cunning Loki. Thor was a little downcast at first, but then suddenly he looked up in anger and glared menacingly at Loki. How is this a way to get my hammer back, and not just a way to mock me? He asked. If I'll just be in Thrym's hall, but won't get my hands on Mjolnir? I'm warning you, don't you try to fool me. Oh, by no means, Loki assured him hastily. We just have to remind Thrym that you're looking forward to a blessed and happy marriage. Heimdall has foreseen that you'll get your hammer back that way. Remember one of its uses. Thor's expression relaxed as he understood what Loki meant. Yes, that's a very good idea indeed, he said. So Thor and Loki set out for Jotunheim and the dwelling of Thrym. A messenger had gone before them to tell Thrym that Freya was coming with her bridesmaid, that the wedding feast was to be prepared and the guests gathered, and that Mjolnir was to be at hand, so that it might be given over to the dwellers of Asgard soon afterwards. Thrym and his giant sister hastened to have everything ready. So Thor and Loki, they came to the giant's house in the dress of a bride and a bridesmaid. A veil was over Thor's head, hiding his beard and his fierce eyes. He wore a red embroidered robe, and at his side hung a girdle of housekeeper's keys. On his arms, he wore bracelets of red gold. Loki, of course, was veiled too. The hall of Thrym's great house was swept and garnished, and great tables were laid for the feast. And Thrym's sister was going from one guest to another, vaunting that her brother was getting one of the beautiful dwellers of Asgard for his bride, Freya, whom so many of the giants had tried to win. When Thor and Loki stepped across the threshold, Thrym went to welcome them. He wanted to raise the veil of his bride and give her a kiss. But Loki, quickly laid his hand on the giant's shoulder. "No," he said, "don't raise her veil. We dwellers in Asgard are reserved and bashful. Freya would be much offended to be kissed before this company." Aye," said Thrym's sister. "Don't raise your bride's veil, brother. These dwellers in Asgard are more refined in their ways than we, the giants." Then the giantess took Thor by the hand and led him to the table. The size and the girth of the bride didn't surprise the huge giants who were in the wedding company. They stared at Thor and Loki, but they could see nothing of their faces and little of their forms because of the veils and the dresses. Thor sat at the table with Thrym on one side and Loki on the other. Then the feast began, and Thor, not noticing that what he did was unbecoming to a refined maiden, ate 8 salmon right away. Loki nudged him and pressed his foot, but he didn't heed Loki. And after the salmon, he ate a whole ox. "These maids of Asgard," said the giants to each other, "they may be refined, as Thrym's sister says, but their appetites are huge enough." "No wonder she eats, poor thing," said Loki to Thrym. "It is 8 nights since we left Asgard, and Freya never ate upon the way. So anxious was she to see Thrym and to come to his house." Poor darling," said the giant. "What she has eaten is little after all." Now Thor nodded his head towards the mead vat. Thrym ordered his servants to bring a measure to his bride. The servants were kept coming with measures to Thor. While the giants watched and while Loki nudged and nodded, Thor drank 3 barrels of mead. "Oh," said the giants to Thrym's sister, "we are not so sorry that we failed to win a bride from Asgard. Gosh." And now a piece of the veil slipped aside, and Thor's eyes were seen for an instant. "Oh, how is it that Freya has such glaring eyes?" said Thrym. Poor thing," said Loki. "No wonder her eyes are glaring and staring. She hasn't slept for 8 nights. So anxious was she to come to you and to your house, O Thrym. But now the time has come for you to join hands with your bride. Long has Freya looked forward to this moment that will begin a happy and blessed marriage." "Blessed!" exclaimed Thrym. "I almost forgot. Bring Mjolnir so that I can lay it into Freya's lap to hallow her. May our marriage thus be blessed forever." This was the use of Thor's hammer that Loki had alluded to earlier on, hallowing. Then Thrym, with the simple part of his nature breaking through, rose up and brought Mjolnir, the defense of Asgard, into the feasting hall. Thor could hardly restrain himself from springing up and seizing it from the giant, but Loki was able to keep him still. Thrym brought over the hammer and put it into the lap of her whom he thought was his bride. Thor's hands closed on his hammer. Instantly, he stood up. The veil fell off him. His countenance and his blazing eyes were seen by all. First, he struck down Thrym, the king of the giants, with his great hammer. Mjolnir sent out terrible lightning and thunder that could be seen and heard across all of the 9 realms, and that from afar made every living being in Midgard tremble in fear, sent the dwarfs hiding deep down in their caves, and made the gods and the elves brace themselves. Thor took out one giant after another, until he had killed all of them. Finally, he struck one blow on the wall of the house. Down it came crashing. Then Thor went striding out of the ruin with Loki beside him, while the roof and walls fell down on the slain giants. Such was Thor's wrath at the theft of his hammer. And so was Mjolnir, the defense of Asgard and protector of the gods, first lost and then won back again. What do you think? Who deserves the greatest credit for getting back Mjolnir? Thor with his might? Freya for lending her feather dress? Heimdall for having the idea in the first place? Or perhaps Loki? Let me know by leaving a comment below. If you want to hear more stories, click the subscribe button and also hit the bell icon to get notified. And if you enjoyed the video, why don't you give it a like?